Welcome back to Definitely Not Definitive. I'm Ken.
And I'm Bethany.
And we're just a couple of kooky, crazy kids in love that love doing some reactions together.
Yeah, we're diving into some Dying Light.
Yeah, so this is one of the winners on our poll for YouTube membership. We got like different videos that we vote on, and this and a bunch of Overwatch 2 trailers won. They got the two highest votes in our poll. And so this is why you wouldn't survive Dying Light's virus. The Harran, that virus, you know, the virus in Dying Light. By Wow Such Gaming, and we've checked out a couple of these other Why You Wouldn't Survive, and they were really fun. I think we did The Last of Us and one of the Gears of War ones. So yeah, if you want more reactions like this, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit the like button and do all that fun stuff that you already know about.
Yeah, and if you want to be able to vote on future polls, go ahead and hit the Join Now button, and that'll grant you access to do that.
Yep, it's just $1 to get access to the polls with membership, and the higher tier gives you early ad-free access a month in advance for most of our stuff. Ready to do this?
Ready.
Okay.
This week, we cover the hardcore parkour, babies with rabies, care package inbound, anti-vaxxers would probably reconsider their standpoint in this scenario, giving Left 4 Dead's infected a run for their money. It's not a fear of heights, it's a fear of falling. Good night, good luck. Hopefully the sequel isn't baiting us with the whole your choices matter stick AAA games have been promising for years. Zombies that don't want to eat your brains but talk to your brains with their brains, special infected ripoffs, one small step with Dead Island, one giant leap with Dying Light game itself. This week, we are saying why you wouldn't survive Dying Light's Harran virus.
Harran, okay.
As with any and all pandemic outbreaks that result in ravenous, stark-raving man-eaters, a sudden and otherwise unexplained virus basically has a field day with the local population. In Dying Light's universe, we see it all unfold in a rather large city bustling with development. With Harran, Turkey, generations of intellectual development made this specific expanse of industrialization boom for centuries, even since the early 1700s. The Ottoman Empire was barely involved with the upkeep or protection of the city, and as World War I began, the city found itself to be free of any conflict. Although Harran was independent of the actions of the empire, once the empire crumbled after the Arab Revolt, the rise of the Republic of Turkey gave the power to Harran to establish itself as a self-governed city-state, which may have factored immensely into the pandemic that it would be besieged by in 2014. Origins of the virus are mostly rumors, speculation, and hypothesis, but there are two prominent ideas that have been stated. The harder-to-believe version of the virus's origin comes from a lone conspiracy theorist named David, who claims that an alien race named the Godoids sent an asteroid laced with infection to Earth. Why? Because there are reptilians from the planet Orion that created the Illuminati, using the virus to create an army of slaves to do the Godoids' bidding. Oh my god. Oh my god.
He's right!
We're not alone.
Appreciate the X-Files music.
Yep.
This also could be inspired by Romero's universe, where a satellite orbited Mars, crashed into American cemetery, released a virus, and awoke the dead. However, that's just a theory. A game theory. But the realistic hypothesis with researched fortitude is that the virus was man-made by a military who launched this infection into the none the wiser town of Harran. Since they rely on complete self-governance and are free to control their own affairs, it may seem like it was the perfect testing site to unleash a contained experiment, observing how the virus would mutate, adapt, and ravage a population, while also taking note of how normal citizens react, fight back, and try to either escape or quell the outbreak. More theories on this will be brought up as we progress through the video. The virus, which simply will be referred to as the Harran virus, spread like wildfire in the short time it was introduced. But what exactly is the virus, and what does it do to the human host? Well, like I said at the beginning, it's very reminiscent of the infections in 28 Days Later, and more relatably, Left 4 Dead. But rage monkeys and an airborne virus weren't the beginning instruments of this symphony of destruction. Instead, the virus is much more traditional and linear in the sense that it is only transferred directly through an infected's bodily fluids to a healthy host. Adapted as a pathogen extremely similar to that of rabies, an extremely viral disease that once entered through the bloodstream will multiply exponentially and eventually inflammate the brain of any mammal, causing deathly fever, erratic behavior, violent tendencies, seizing of one or more body parts, irrational confusion or paranoia, passing out, and even a fear of water. Although this spread could be
Very much like
prevented
rabies.
if the bite occurs on the arms or legs, resorting to amputating the afflicted limb right after being bitten within a reasonable amount of time. The main cause of its spread is due to the virus manipulating the host mammal to become overtly aggressive and attacking in the primitive form of biting and or scratching. The rabies virus will then easily transfer through the victim's nerves or saliva. Although rabies
Time
can
goes
take
like
a
Dodge.
wide range of time to fully infect and incapacitate the host, its symptoms are too prominent to ignore, although it may be mistaken for other diseases. Once it has been correctly diagnosed, it can be treated fairly easily, if done within the first 10 days of infection, with proper vaccinations in a 14-day round of doses. But in most cases, once neurological symptoms have arisen without vaccinations, it is fairly certain that full infection will follow. The Harran virus borrows from its sister pathogen, and the contraction process is much more streamlined, seeming to reach the neurological stage within hours or days, the time frame varying with the DNA structure of each individual host, a much less forgiving schedule than rabies. Once bitten, cut deeply, or injected directly by the virus, the victim will experience bouts of exhaustion, blurred or double vision, and seizures. After a while, their skin will become extremely pale, their face will become more sunken in, and their body will appear to be suffering from malnourishment. To prevent fully succumbing to the neurological defects of the virus, the GRE made suppressant antizin that can nullify the process entirely. But as Dr. Zier says,
Suppressant. It's called antizin. Suppresses the symptoms. Here, sit.
Doesn't get rid of them.
Antizin postpones the inevitable.
much like the
inevitable.
Zombrex in Dead Rising. With how rapidly the infection spread, Harran's Ministry of Defense quarantined the city, bombing all outgoing bridges and walling off or caving in any tunnels in and out of the city. The GRE Global Relief Effort, created in reaction to the Harran virus in a somewhat form of conjunction with and against the Ministry of Defense, a humanitarian relief organization attempting to aid those within the quarantine areas of Harran, from developing the antizine to flying C-130 Hercules cargo planes to airdrop supplies to the victims. However, it is discovered that later down the road, the GRE do not wish to stop or cure this disease at all, but to discover a way of weaponizing it to sell it for a fairly fetching price,
Of
most
course.
likely to whichever government or terrorist organization bids the highest on it, which may show the organization may have been behind the outbreak from the start, considering they were the ones who manufactured a temporary cure to the disease and sent in an agent who was ignorant to their true intentions and in order to execute Suleiman, creating the suppression of antizine in order to temporarily cure those afflicted with the Harran virus may have also been a clue to them being the culprits behind the outbreak, just in case key personnel had been bitten, kind of like Crane, while also trying to seem innocent with frequent antizine drops into the quarantine zone. The virus itself can be killed when it's directly exposed to ultraviolet radiation or even sunlight, but that is only in cases of being under a microscope. If someone is bitten, the virus will act too fast and spread through their bloodstream enough to not be fully affected by the UV or light exposure. However, this weakness to UV rays and sunlight resonates in the infected, as they either are less aggressive during the day or avoid daylight in general and become nocturnal, and can be repelled by any UV producing lamps or lights, as it will cause them pain and disorientation. It's because of this natural enemy that the Harran virus infected have adapted to existing mostly for the night and utilize a new sense of night vision to easily traverse the darkness. If the virus is allowed to run its full course, there is no going back. Your brain will enter a state of decay and your motor functions will still be highly active, but way out of your control. Although not widely known or experimented on at this point, depending on the host, the environment and possible erratic mutations fluctuating with the virus will transform your body and mind into one of several variants of the Harran virus's living
sword?
fight or flight guinea pig. The earliest and most common stage of infection is the viral, forcing the host to become excessively violent, as will most of its predecessors. They will launch a full-scale attack at anyone around them without any restraint. In 30% of these cases, the victims will pronounce coherent human dialect and try to communicate with those around them. Unable to control their own bodies, begging others to either run or mercy kill them before it's
That makes
too
it worse,
late.
killing
Kinda
them.
like how the flood
Yeah.
take over someone, as well as some people that are infected by the cordyceps brain infection in The Last of Us. They will run at full sprint whenever pursuing the healthy, but will not bite them when they finally reach them, attempting to punch and kick a victim to death instead, showing that they are completely feral but will not succumb to just biting a victim. They, like all their brothers and sisters, are also attracted to loud noise. The viral will eventually start to decompose and turn into their slower counterparts, the biter. Although sluggish and more of a traditional zombie, just like its namesake, will seek to bite survivors to infect them, mainly probably due to
Stay
their brain
down.
decaying,
Shoot it.
not completely dead yet. Daylight severely limits their motor skills, as it seems more of the virus is prominent and prone to be affected by this natural enemy. At night, these limitations are withdrawn, giving the biters more
little X-ray
mobility
vision.
and an
Yeah.
increase to their aggression and threat level. Some biters will retain the knowledge to fight beyond a bite and will either slug survivors with a powerful right or left hook like the bruiser, or even further with the goons, possibly mutated from men of bulkier physiques or a sporadic production of growth hormones within the human body. Goons will retain the know-how to use basic heavy melee weaponry at full force to crush survivors, although the downside to all
Thing
that
isn't doing
bulk
anything to that
is
goon.
its very slow-moving pace, so avoiding them wouldn't be as difficult, but encountering it within close quarters would not be recommended. However, these are just the basic forms of the infection. Much like a common infected in Left 4 Dead, while you are attempting to run from basic zombie archetypes, their mutated forms will slowly begin to pop up left and right, causing varying levels of danger and, in some cases, curiosity. First off, the bomber will have had its front torso corroded through, probably by stomach acid, and most of their organs on full display
Damn.
for any passerbys, possibly caused by the Harran virus accelerating the stomach acid production enough to where it eats through the lining and melts
That
the
is
skin.
awful.
The acceleration of cells by the virus may also be overclocking the body in general, and the stimulant either caused by being around a survivor or having a concentrated source of light on it may cause the bomber's
Let's just
body to
stand there.
hit critical mass and explode, sending sharpened bone shrapnel in all
Need to see that
directions, potentially knocking back and killing nearby survivors. Creatures like the toad, no not you, can be found mostly near ocean fronts and bodies of water, possibly with their downwing tissue absorbing high amounts of water, giving it a bloated appearance.
Spitter.
Their stomach lining has mutated enough to repurpose itself as a long-distance cannon. They will lob balls of acidic phlegm at their prey to dissolve them or severely burn them from a distance. I feel like I've heard this before.
Yeah.
For some reason, those in security and adorning riot gear will adapt to mutations in a different way than others, although it is said to be developed from a failed experimental strain of the Harran virus.
Demolisher.
These specific infected becoming tank-like and charging at survivors with slow but reckless abandon. The Demolisher. If this guy feels like he is not capable of ramming into the survivors at close quarters, it will find and hurl debris at them in order to incapacitate them from afar, showing moderate levels of battle sense. This sounds familiar too. These may have been among the first infected that researchers slapped riot
Tank
gear
and a
on
charger
to make
in
them
one.
more resistant to damage, and resilient they are, being able to take large amounts of heavy ammunition to just about any part of their body until they finally tumble over, while direct combat is not advised. For once in a zombie outbreak, children are showcased, and they are definitely not safe, becoming screamers. While not an immediate threat, they will wander about crying to themselves like a witch, and when spotting a healthy human, will scream at a high enough decibel to disorient the survivor and attract its adult cohorts to converge on its location. They are commonly found
bastard.
in the homes, schools, or familiar places by themselves to lure in gullible survivors, much again like the witch from Left 4 Dead. While the game only allows you to hold them and snap their neck, you should be able to pop them with a good shot to the cranium. Interestingly enough, one type of infected called the bolter will not engage survivors in any form and will actually run at an almost cheetah-like speed to escape, mutations possibly strengthening its leg muscles to produce running speeds that high. Covered in almost tumor-like growths, this infected does everything in its power to bolt when spotted by survivors.
Why?
However, they will observe people for however long they can until they are noticed, depicting some kind of observational intelligence. They can alert nearby zombies by yelling, similarly to the screamers, but not as loud or frequently. When not startled, they will prey like vultures and eat any dead, decaying corpses left behind by others. So they are dangerous in the fact that they can rally more infected to your area, dip out, and return to eat your dead body if it doesn't turn. Giant and more savage variants of these types exist as freaks of nature as well, leading smaller, weaker versions of their zombie types to spread the disease and can cause more chaos, destruction, and take a
We
lot
have a
more
lot of
damage.
grenades.
Exactly.
Things only get worse
seem to
as
be doing
night
much.
draws near. With the sun no longer out to suppress the strength and aggression of the zombie hordes, the most lethal forces of the infected ranks will emerge and take chase. The volatile, the iconic infected in the franchise, is a veritable conglomeration of every infected type, as well as the mutations that led to their creations. The volatile, utilizing the strength of the goon, the diluted but still affected speed of the bolter, having the ability to spit acidic phlegm from the toad, the corrosion of the epidermis and exposure exposure of the innards like the bombers, and hardened exoskeletons somewhat like the demolisher. The volatile is relentless once it spots its prey, sprinting great distances, scaling walls and buildings with ease, dousing victims in acid, and finding relative ease with pinning others down, using its floppy mandibles to latch on and allow for a deeper bite and accelerated infection rate.
Oh my God.
If it sets its eyes on you, it will not give up the chase, no matter the distance or height, unless you are equipped with UV ray producing tech, or if you can run away from it long enough for the morning sun to force it to run into hiding. They also will tend to hunt in packs, making the chase even more threatening, as its screams could attract the more aggressive Harran victims around. If you do end up trying to fight it head on, melee would not be recommended, as it would easily ensnare you in seconds as you try to get the first swing in. As for firearms, the hardened exoskeleton it has will make more powerful weaponry take a few extended shots before taking it out. If the mutation accelerates within a volatile enough, they can become alphas among their packs and evolve form with adapted natural armor, its ribcage even more prominently spiked and jagged, and their skin becoming blackened in areas depicting how violently the virus is attacking the host's body. Naturally, their physical capabilities are magnified, allowing for more damage to be done as well to be taken, but their natural instinct is to actually fire their acidic phlegm at survivors more often than their less evolved counterparts. They will also travel amongst regular volatiles in order to procure prey and increase their Harran virus's kill count. And the king of the zombies itself, the Night Hunter, may appear only during critical conditions, as it was never really seen in the main game or story, just the multiplayer be the zombie game type, with the ability to adapt and wield a litany of powers and abilities ranging from hunter pouncing long distances, spitting toxic goo at long ranges to engulf survivors like the spitter, charging through enemies, vomiting on enemies, and bringing in infected reinforcements by smell as a real boom, and to ensnare enemies from afar with its now weaponized innards and be able to tank damage and swipe you down in a witch hunt. Basically, it's just every single one of the special infected slapped together in one body. Let's just hope it doesn't try and hump your head to finish you off like the jockey. But how exactly does it come into existence? The only real conclusion that can be established for the creation of this overpowered, hyper-mutating Left 4 Dead clusterfuck, spoilers ahead if you haven't played the following DLC or Dying Light. But if you choose the option to not nuke Harran and everything around, Kyle Crane will attempt to return to his friends with a cure, but be forced to drink said cure by the sentient volatile known as the Mother. I'm about to hit you with some conspiracy-ass stuff leading towards the military theory I spoke of earlier, but the wife of a Harran colonel named Jasmine attempted to use the so-called cures. However, the vials of these so-called cures were actually further government experimentations to weaponize the virus, leading to her transformation into the only known sentient volatile to this point, capable of rational thinking, human behavior, non-violent tendencies, and interestingly enough, telepathic communication, implying the virus does have psychoactive capabilities.
Looking at my face, there is no medicine. You want mankind to become what I am? Listen to my voice.
How about no?
However, when night draws near, the virus will take full control of a sentient volatile, blacking them out of their critical thinking and becoming just another feral hunter that will attack until morning draws near once again. Labeled the Mother by those who found her as a religious deity who walks between the living and so-called dead, cults could be established around those subjected to the weaponized cure. Plus, if the army were to find some willing subjects, who would know, maybe we would have these sentient volatiles in the battlefield. If you decide not to nuke Harran though, which is what I usually default to as the only choice for most of these why you wouldn't survive scenarios, the Mother will force Crane to drink the weaponized virus, eventually transforming him into what audibly sounds like a volatile.
That sucks.
Yeah.
No good deed goes
Also akin
unpunished.
to what can be heard as the shriek for the Night Hunter in multiplayer. It's viable to assume that battle-hardened, mentally stable, capable, and overall well-rounded, healthy humans subjected to numerous occasions of being bitten or exposed to the regular mutating virus conformed to the weaponized serum could create what the Night Hunter was. Kyle Crane had been attacked by every infected type up to that point, so a strain of each of their mutations could be dormant within his own system. So if we somehow have a Kyle Crane type, or even a Master Chief, or dare I say Doom Guy type, if they are subjected to this serum in any way, we could be ultimately be boned by just one god-tier zombie. When it comes to surviving amongst the violent rampage of disease, the Harran virus is quick and merciless. But unlike the scenarios of Left 4 Dead, the only known ways of transferring the infection is via bite, bodily fluids, or exposure to the serum. If it had been government experimentation that started this epidemic where you are, it may be safe to assume minuscule military forces would be deployed to combat the initial epidemic. In order to quell this epidemic, the infected would have to be exterminated in their early stages without mutating into any other variants besides the viral or biter, seeing as how weak they are to gunfire and assault. If the military were to react, it needs to be swift, or else the mutants will overwhelm them with their sheer durability, variety in attacks, and infection rate. The reason the Harran virus is allowed to become so powerful is because of the town's self-governance and hasty quarantine, allowing the town to be a test tube of viable subjects that allow the virus to harness strength and overwhelm its borders and bleeds to the rest of the world as depicted by Dying Light 2's trailers. If without government or military assistance, the only way of surviving would be reminiscent of those hiding out in the tower in Harran, bunkering down with hopefully any kind of UV-related light source to repel infected away, and spending the daytime to scavenge and find a way to get out. Although ultraviolet lights may be hard to find depending on where you are, and going into department or electronic stores that have already been ransacked will also hold a plethora of infected who are trying to hide out in the darkness of these stores would prove to be difficult to procure said lighting, constantly working to have working generators and fuel to keep them running when power grids have gone offline will be of primary concern. That's if you have the knowledge and know-how to fix these and work them on a regular basis. On top of finding antizen if anyone is infected, food, water, and regular medicine to survive day-to-day and other baseline necessities would need to come into play. Guns and ammunition would be a necessity as well, only venturing out during the day as the safest method of scavenging. But the Harran virus will only get worse day to day as the numbers grow and long-term members mutate further. Mutating day to day, you would have to have the knowledge of each of these newly formed zombies, how to counteract their attacks, or in the very least, the better way to avoid or escape them. Interacting and getting to know them through personal field research, chances are engaging any advanced infected directly or even shooting them would cause them to immediately attack and kill you or infect you. Seeing giant forms of already dangerous infected, getting jebaited by infant zombies only to have it call back up on you, being doused in acid from afar and being hunted down relentlessly, and having that all become more
if it's afraid of the water, it's like surrounded by water.
So just of the night sky will be a task and a half on top of the growing body count. Their durability in most cases is ridiculous and would require high caliber ammunition just to effectively kill them. Of course, fighting regular zombies would mandate using a lot of stamina while swinging around common blunt weaponry like bats or anything with enough force to cause head trauma, or bladed weaponry like knives to destroy the brain, or katanas to remove the head. The infected can and will continue to attack with separated limbs. However, it's hard to say what extended blood loss and its toll would do on a Harran victim's body. In terms of longevity, the hordes will be stronger, but for how long? Technically, these hosts are still living, breathing organisms, and eventually, either malnourishment, dehydration, or pure bodily exhaustion will take their toll, especially on infected that have had their mutations overclock their bodies, much like the special infected of Left 4 Dead, the series that seemingly inspired a lot of content in this game. Well, that and Dead Island, but we don't talk about Dead Island. As I said in the first Why You Wouldn't Survive with the Left 4 Dead infected, these zombie types could die out over time, relying on keeping their numbers up to keep the virus alive. But older hosts eventually dying out by natural causes or dying to direct sunlight. While formidable and cannibalistic, their lifestyles and body modifications are not sustainable. They are overclocking their body, and eventually they will die from that occurrence. So if we are able to slow the infection rate, we may stand a chance by waiting out the infected to die on their own. If not, we will have to go with what Dying Light ultimately decides as the only cure: the Mother's God of the Sun detonating the nuke and wiping out the infection before it spreads. If it has already gotten worldwide, then a consensus of the United Nations would have to come to a conclusion and agree that nuking major cities and hives of the infected would have to occur, even at the cost of innocent lives. So, do you think you could weather the Harran virus? With Dying Light 2 officially coming out in time, we may be seeing further ramifications of the virus's impact on the world at large. Now, did I cover anything incorrectly? Do you believe the infected are actually reanimated corpses? Are you cocky and think you could be a Kyle Crane through it all? No, you're stupid. Don't, you know, you're not going to survive. Let's just hope your powerful and agile ass doesn't become infected then if you are a Kyle Crane.
Yeah, I mean, it helps when the virus is only transmitted like through a bite. Makes spreading it not like seem so instant, but still, like, if I was in a city that was infected, I'd be dead. I know that much. I can't fight. I don't have any weapons and survival skills like that.
Well, we have, you know, like the weapons that any home's gonna have, like kitchen knives. You know, gotta be able to think about these things. But
Yeah, but I've not trained with kitchen knives.
no, but I mean, it's something.
And our kitchen knives are very dull.
That is, yeah, that's true.
And I guess the points, you know, that's all you need to do is just stab.
There's a meat cleaver in the drawer.
Okay.
That's a good one.
All right. Then we'll survive because we have a meat cleaver.
I think what really stuck out to me on this in terms of like just the I would absolutely be dead element was the range of abilities that the different zombies have.
Yeah.
So like you have one that's basically a tank charger kind of zombie all wrapped up in one, dead. The spitter of toxic things like that can get you from a distance. I mean, they basically have a sniper. So dead. And then the volatile that's just got like the powers of everyone.
Yeah.
It's like so dead. So, you know, I much prefer the zombies that are from like The Walking Dead that are a little bit slower. They're not really conscious or sentient. They're just kind of like biters that you know, scavenge and roam around for something to latch onto, but they're not like the World War Z zombies. And like, to me, these felt more like the World War Z zombies where it's like, you're just totally screwed.
Well, yeah. And in like The Walking Dead, you had people like believing that they were still alive and people like were still in there. Whereas like, and they couldn't even like really even make any like coherent sentences or anything like that. Just like, you know, like moans or whatever. Like, but with this, like the fact that they could like kind of talk a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I think, you know, even more so people would be like, no, like we gotta, you know, come up with a cure to save them. We can't just be killing everybody. Like there's a chance. Like, you know, I heard my husband say, you know, some like, you know, words to me. And I swear he was saying, don't, like, you know, he was saying, help me. Or, you know, people will try to hang on to the fact of like, you know, that their loved ones are still inside there. So I think that's what would make this spread more and make it tougher. Is the fact that people would not want to lose hope and think that they can still save their loved ones, and that like that's why they wouldn't want to like, you know, drop a nuke or whatever on this town or and whatnot. So
well, and the child one too, like, you know, the witch from Left 4 Dead.
Yeah.
That was always one that like, you know, using their like sort of like feminine cries to lure people in. That's gonna get people. But like you have a child, you know, and you think, oh my God, a child has somehow survived and left alone. And like, I don't know. I mean, like, it doesn't sound right to be like, oh, you'd help a child more than you'd help a woman. And that's not what I'm saying. But like, I think the witch you might start to be able to wrap your head around a little bit faster is like, that's a tactic. Whereas like a child is like, but if there's a chance it's an actual child, like how do you just leave a child?
Yeah, it's true. It's another reason you'd be screwed.
Totally screwed.
Let us know your thoughts about this video down below in the comments, why you think you would survive the Dying Light virus,
Good luck.
what your strategy would be. And thanks so much for checking out our reaction for why you wouldn't survive Dying Light's Harran virus by Wild Such Gaming. But you keep in mind
that our reaction is definitely not definitive.